Welcome again, everyone, tonight, both those of us here and those tuning in on TorahAnytime.com. I want to thank TorahAnytime.com, as always, for recording the shiurim and making them available to a much wider public. May Hashem bring hatzlacha to all of your efforts.
Amen.
As always, we're dedicating the Torah learned in tonight's class to the refuah shleima of Tzarya Chaved Bas Chanamasha. Okay. This is not a live feed. No, it's not a simulcast. Okay, haven't made that big time yet. In any event, we are continuing now with the second part of mitzvah Reish Nun Ches in the Sefer Minchas Chinuch, and this is the mitzvah of the negative prohibition of the Torah prohibiting cheating in weights and measures, liquid measures, linear measures, volume measures, and so on. Anything that involves measuring, cheating, and short-changing, as it were, to customers in regards to weights and measures is covered by this mitzvah. Okay, so just a brief synopsis and a segue. Basically what we came out with from the Minchas Chinuch last week is there's a machlokas rishonim going on between the Sefer Chinuch on the one hand and the Rambam on the other hand. What does each one hold? The Sefer Chinuch is of the opinion that unlike Gezel and Geneva, other forms of theft and larceny, where we say the shear for the lav, the measurement for the transgression described by the Torah, is a shava pruta, a certain small coin, okay? And anything less than a shava pruta, if one were to steal or to commit larceny or anything less than a shava pruta, that would be forbidden, but it's only forbidden on the level of what we call chatzi shir osem and atayra. It's like to draw a parallel away from civil law into ritual law. That would be as if a person ate a half of olive's worth of forbidden foods, of swine flesh, of lobster, of meat and milk combinations, right? And never ended up eating the other half of the olive's worth. You're not allowed to do it, but it's not the transgression of the law of the Torah. It's forbidden on a Torah level, but it's not considered a full-fledged transgression of the law. So, by Gezel and Geneva, it's unanimous. There's no machlokas rishonim. If you steal less than a shava pruta, it's osem in Torah, just like eating half a zayis of lobster, but it's not the avera of the law of the transgression explicated in the Torah. What about by this law that we're learning here, l'sasa ol b'mishpat b'mida b'mishkal v'masura? Right? Do not do a miscarriage of justice in measurements, in weights, and in volume measurements. Yeah. So there we have a machlokas rishonim. The Chinuch holds even if you cheat in weights and measurements to the tune of less than a shava pruta, you will still over on this lav. You still transgress this lav. Yeah? The Rambam, at least according to the Minchas Chinuch's reading, it's not unanimous that that's what the Rambam means, but we're learning Minchas Chinuch tonight, so for the time being, let's limit it to his reading. The Minchas Chinuch understands the Rambam to argue on this and to be consistent with the lavim, with the negative commandments of Gezel and Geneva. The same way over there, less than a shava pruta is not the lav, so to over here, it's not the lav. We had a question, or he had a question, Minchas Chinuch had a question on the Chinuch Shita. I'm not going to review that one, but let's fall right into his next question on the Chinuch Shita. And that is paragraph on page 1 of the handout. That's paragraph number 8 that in my numbering system. Vod, another question on the opinion of the Sefer Chinuch is, Amayin like an alav zeh, im shika b'pakat b'shar pruta. Why don't you get malchus? Why don't you get flogging, corporal punishment for this lav? If you say that if I cheat somebody, okay, I was pouring a quart of milk into a customer's can, right? Or receptacle. He didn't have a quart receptacle, he had a generic receptacle, right? And my quart is short. Yeah? But it's not short by much. And the amount of milk that I cheated him out of is less than a shava pruta. According to the Chinuch, You're over the lav, this lav that we're learning over here. But it's a shava pruta. A shava pruta is a general rule that applies to all dinei mamras, all monetary law, that a shava pruta has no inherent worth. And it's not nitin lahei shavin. It's not something that you return. You can't, in the mitzvah of gezel and geneva and aveda, all those mitzvahs that involve hashava. You're supposed to return an item to its rightful owner. If the amount that you want to return is less than a shava pruta, there is no mitzvah of hashava. You cannot return. It's basically less than a shava pruta is meaningless in terms of a monetary value. Right? Kedushin, you want to affect the kinyan with which Jews perform marriage. The ring has to be worth a shava pruta, less than a shava pruta. Doesn't matter how much sentimental value it is, hard cold on the market. If it's less than a shava pruta, that's not kinyan kesef. That has no erech. That has no real worth. All right. So therefore, he poses this question: why shouldn't you get malchus? If it is the lav, right, but it's not returnable, and it has no monetary worth, then you should get malchus. And he's going to bring a precedent for this. This is not something that you can make compensation for. The pachas b'shava pruta lav mamanu. Less than a shava pruta is not considered mamanu. It's not considered property or money at all. V'imkein, if so, kamo chol b'chavero. The pachas b'shava pruta. Just as we find a precedent that in the law of assault, okay, the rule is ein loko mishalem. Okay, no double jeopardy. When you do something that incurs both a physical, and by physical I'm including both corporal and capital punishment, right, and a monetary payment, so the rule is you don't get both. Right? It's too complex right now to go into when you get the monetary penalty and when you get the physical punishment. But suffice it to say that in most cases that involve a civil suit, a matter of money between two people, the general rule of thumb is that when there's any money to be compensated, there will not be corporal punishment, there will not be malchus. All right? However, where a lav pertains, where there is a negative commandment of the Torah that involves proaction, right? It's not committed passively, it's committed actively, right? And for whatever reason there is no compensation, then the default setting of every law, of every negative commandment of the Torah is you have to get malchus, you have to get flogged for it. So, as counterintuitive as it sounds, yeah, if I beat up a guy within an inch of his life, if I dismember him, if I owe him $1 million, I pay the $1 million. There's no corporal punishment from Bezdin, right? However, if I give him a little flick behind the ear, in which case all the 5 different types of payments that are supposed to be paid in the case of an assault, all right, where those don't apply, I shouldn't say where those don't apply, where the aggregate of those will not add up to a shava pruta, so the din is then the one who committed the assault gets flogged, gets malchus. Okay, of course, we're talking about in the times of Sanhedrin, we're talking about where proper testimony took place, where proper warning took place. If all the other specs are met that are required to give a flogging, to give malchus, then Bezdin will give corporal punishment to the guy who pinched you too hard in the cheek or flicked you behind the ear, right? But not to the guy who dismembered you, paralyzed you for life, beat you within an inch of your life. It's counterintuitive, but that happens to be the law of the Torah. Ain't a local mishalem, you're not going to get malchus and have to pay up. Generally speaking, we want you to be paid up, but where you can't be paid up, because the assault was so insignificant that there's nothing to pay, less than a shava pruta is not considered a compensation, a compensatory payment at all, then malchus kicks in. Says the Minchas Chinuch, let's continue. Okay, you see, there's a funny kind of parentheses bracket here. It looks like a more than sign and a less than sign. Okay, so skip all of that. Continue in this paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. Second to last word on the line. Hachanami, says the Minchas Chinuch here too, hayachayev malchus alzeh. So here too, in the lav, in the negative commandment of not cheating with weights and measures, where you cheated to the tune of less than a shava pruta, you should get malchus. It's a lav. It's committed actively. should get malchus. Now, according to the Rambam, there's not a question, because according to the Rambam, you don't transgress the law when you cheat less than a shava pruta. But according to the Chinuch, who holds that even for less than a shava pruta, this is different. This is an exception to the rule that we find by Gezel and G'naiv, by theft and larceny. When it comes to this law of cheating in weights and measures, says the Chinuch, you're over the law. You transgressed the negative command of the Torah, even when the measurement that you cheated on is worth less than a shava pruta. Well, if that's the case, then sometimes you should be getting malchus for this law. In cases where you cheated less than a shava pruta, you should be getting malchus. And of course, that doesn't exist anywhere in Shas or in Paiskim. So that's his question. How can the Chinuch hold such a thing? That you're over the law. Not just Chatzi Shir Asim and Atayra. Not just it's forbidden to do, but it's not the law there. It's not the threshold of the law. But it's actually a transgression of the law. How can the Chinuch hold such a thing? Somewhere, someplace, it should say there will be situations where you get malchus for it. By assault, it's spelled out several times in Shas, all over in the Paiskim. Right? That's his question. Elavada, he concludes, rather it must be shava legazel, the davka shava pruta b'yinin. It must be that the Rambam is right, or that my reading of the Rambam is right, that this lav that we're studying here tonight is equivalent to the lavim of lo sigzol and lo signo, of theft and larceny, and the same way over there, less than a shava pruta is not the lav, so to over here, less than a shava pruta is not the lav. So while it may be true that if I cheated less than a shava pruta, there's no compensation, there's nothing to compensate, neither will I get malchus, because that's not the transgression. Chatzi Shir is also in but you don't get malchus for it. If I eat half a kazayas of lobster and stop, and never eat another half a kazayas of lobster again, I did something bad, but I'm not going to get malchus for it. For Chatzi Shir also you don't get malchus. It's forbidden without a penalty. Okay. Before I move on, is this clear? Would anyone like to dissent? Does anyone have any problems with this question / proof of the Minchas Chinuch? Okay, let me just share something with you, a pretty profound insight from the great Rabbi Zalman Meltzer. Rabbi Zalman Meltzer wrote a commentary on a Rambam called Evan Ha'ezel, and he reads it a little bit differently than the Minchas Chinuch. But let me ask you a question like this, okay? When you have a gazlan, okay, person who's being over the aver of lo sigzal, thou shalt not steal, in the Torah, okay? A mugger, okay? At what point, okay, I'll give you the scenario of a mugging. Reuven walks up to Shimon, okay, pulls a gun or a knife on Shimon, and he says, Shimon, I'd like your wallet. Okay? Shimon starts opening, his coat pocket, and Reuven relieves him of his wallet. Okay? At what point in time, okay, let's say we stopgap, stroboscopic photograph, a video, digitalized video of what went on over here, okay? At what point on the timeline did Reuven transgress the law of the lo sigzal?
I guess when he took the money of wallet into his reshus.
Okay. All right. A hand is considered reshus. Yoda shalom kar balar badami. Okay. When he lifts the wallet out of the breast pocket. Let's say you're a ganef, you're sneaky. Again, I don't know if in English that's called larceny. I don't have a good one English word translation for the difference between gazel and ganef. Right. Okay. So let's say Reuven, instead of doing a frontal assault on Shimon with a gun, doesn't have a weapon, sneaks up from behind Shimon, and takes the wallet out of his pants pocket, his trouser pocket. Okay? Same thing, right? When he lifts it out, that's when he's over lo-signite. That's geneva because the victim is unaware of being relieved of his property at the time. Right? I want to ask you a question. You're a merchant, you're selling milk, you're selling yards of fabric, right? And you're cheating your customers. Okay? You have a yardstick that is 3 inches too short. Right? The customers think it's 36 inches long, it's actually 33 inches long. Okay? And they ask for a yard of silk, you cut off a yard of silk, they're actually getting 33 inches of silk. Okay? At what point are you over the avera? What point on the timeline are you over that there?
I don't think when you make the yardstick 33 inches, because your intent is already there way before that you're going to be...
Excellent. Let's say you know crooked yardstick manufacturers, and you never made it, you bought it, you inherited, your dad was as crooked as you were, I don't know. So you've got a very good point. Actually, time doesn't allow for it, but this lav also includes the manufacture and the maintenance of faulty measures. Okay? So you're making an excellent point. But let's, for the sake of the devil's argument, let's say no, there's no such lav in the Torah to manufacture or to maintain them, there's only lav to use them. When are you over the lav?
I'd say when the customer makes a kinyan on the item, at that point, I would say, because he thinks he's getting a certain amount, he now has something which he's been cheated on. I don't think he's not cheated until he makes a kinyan.
So in other words, when I took the scissors to the fabric and I cut it, or even when I handed it,
you can't even own something. Which
okay, I know that, but I'm asking you to play the devil's advocate for a moment. Let's say you would be allowed to own the faulty measure. Okay, so you're saying when I take the scissor and I cut off 33 inches, calling it or misrepresenting it to the customer and telling him it's 36 inches, it's a yard, a full yard. Yeah. At that point, when I cut with the scissors, I wasn't over anything
yet. That's what I would say. I would say when the customer made the kinyan, he now has something which he's thought was a larger measure, and it wasn't.
Okay. So what about if there's an interval? What about from the time I put the silk on the counter until he hands me over his money, 3 minutes pass? Okay? So you would say for those 3 minutes he wasn't over that area yet?
I would think not.
Yeah, okay? You're thinking along the same lines where Rabbi Zalman melts it. Okay, now, Rabbi Zalman says like this. I don't have a clarity, because I didn't have the sever, I just saw it in a footnote here. I don't have 100% clarity if he means to say that this Avera of Losas Alba Mishpat, you're not over when you do a false measure, or you're not over like Sigza, because I would say when you take the guy's money, that's an act of Zayel too. If you took too much money for too little fabric, even if the Torah had never, right, that was the whole point of this whole discussion of the Minchas Chinuch took off, its takeoff point was a question in the Gemara, why do I need the law of Leisas al Mishpat? It already says in the Torah, Lo Sigzam. If you're cheating somebody at weights and measures, you're stealing from them. Right? So the Gemara's answer is not relevant to our discussion right now, right? But we're always looking, so to speak, for areas of differentiation between the lav of Lo Sigzal and this lav of Leisas al Mishpat. So basically what Rabbi Zalman says is as follows, right? He says, you were over the lav, yeah, when you did the false measure. You gave fruit that was underweight, you poured out milk that wasn't the right volume, you gave silk that wasn't the right measure, right? But it's nitn l'hashavin. It's still not full gezel until the customer puts his money down on the table, right? And if I'm understanding correctly, at that point, are you doing anything active or passive? If he puts the money on your counter, did you do anything?
Before you cut it? Are you saying before you cut it or after you cut it?
When it's no longer, okay, you remember, we're talking about you cheated less than a shava pruta, right? But you can't say it's not nitel laheshavin, right? You can't say that it's not like gazel. If I pickpocket, a half pruta coin, I don't even know there is such currency, but for simplicity's sake, let's say there is such a thing. Okay, if I pickpocket a half pruta coin out of somebody's pocket, right? I understand that's not the law of the Torah. That's only chatzi shir asim in the Torah, right? The Minchas Chinuch, the Chinuch wants to say that if I cheat somebody for less, let's say the 3 extra inches of silk is worth less than a shava pruta. It's only half a pruta, 3/4 of a pruta, right? The Minchas Chinuch wants to say that that's the full-fledged lav of Leisas Oval B'Mishpat, right? So he's asking, well, if that's the case, you should get malchus for it. Says Rabbi Zalman, no, you shouldn't get malchus for it. I'll tell you why. Because don't tell me it's not nitn le'shavin. Nothing's happened yet. Nitn le'shavin is after you were over avera, after you relieved somebody of their property illegally, and you did that to the tune of less than a shava pruta, then you can say it's too meaningless for you to do hashavin on it, right? But if the guy is seized with a sudden hira tshuva, right before the customer puts his money down on the table, right? And and he says, you know something? Here's another 3 inches of silk, or here's another 2 ounces of milk, right? About it's in a certain sense you haven't been over Avera yet. The active part of the Avera you did when you did the false measure, right? But to start talking about, do you need to compensate? Is there enough to compensate? That doesn't happen until the owner puts his money. I mean, the customer, I should say, puts his money down on the counter, or as you said, takes the stuff into his possession. That's a whole question. Metaltlin, if Mois kindness, Mois any kindness, he seems to be learning of his Zalman that it goes when the money changes hands, even if it's Metaltlin. Okay. So I'm saying that's very different than chayvel. By chayvel, by an assault, if you assaulted a guy and it was worth less than a shavapruta, right? So you get malchus because you did something active. You incurred, whatever compensation you have to make at that moment, but there is no compensation to make. So then, and you were over the law of the Torah. Why shouldn't you get malchus, right? But over here, at the time when you were being active, it was still nitnei shavin, even if it's less than a shavapruta. It's a paradoxical thing. It's nitnei shavin because the other half, the loy sigzol element, hasn't kicked in yet. You really haven't cheated him yet, right? If you say, wait, 1 second, don't give me your money yet. Here's another 3 inches of silk. Here's another 2 ounces of milk. Here's another 2 ounces of flour or beans. Whatever he's selling them, right? So it wasn't shot you did the Avera and you're doing tshuva on it. You really haven't done the Avera yet. And at that point, it's already end by myself. At that point, it's passive. At that point, it's up to the customer if he'll put his money down on the table or not. I think that's Rabbi Zalman's kunz over here to get out of the question of the Minchas Chinuch. What can I tell you? You're only 35 minutes late. What can I tell you?
Can I just add something? I just had a strange thought. In those days, when they used to have real silver coins, to sometimes cheat the value of the coin, they used to shave a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now let's say
that's discussed on the place come through.
Okay,
shaving coins is discussed under this.
The guy who's cheating the guy out of 3 inches of silk, the guy who's paying him shaved off just maybe a little bit of the shavapruta off that coin to pay him for that thing. So they're both even?
No, they're both over Avera.
They're both.
Actually, you raise a very interesting point. If you hold that you can get malchus for less than a shavapruta, right? So I would say the answer to your question is, how much are we talking about? If we're talking about cheating to more than a tuna shavapruta, so people are not mochel more than a shavapruta, right? So I would say they're both over the Avera, but they're not going to get malchus because they both owe each other money, right? Okay. They could say, well, look, if it works out exactly that we cheated each other to the penny, to the exact, then we could say we even. But until that's clarified, I could hear how they could have a suit and a bezin, right? But if you hold like the Minchas Chinuch, there's possibly over the Avera for less than a shavapruta, I think they will both get malchus. The mechila is beside the point. Whether they forgive that minute amount or not, you're over the love. Right. Okay. Okay, let's skip ahead. To number 10. Okay, on page 2. Okay, this isn't too complex, it's just factual, but it's an interesting thing that he says. Okay? V'noheges, okay, he's going on that part of the chinuch, which is pretty formulaic. Always when a chinuch articulates a mitzvah, he wants to say who it applies to, when it applies, where it applies, and so on and so forth. So the chinuch said that it applies to men and women in Israel, not in Israel, when the temple is standing, when the temple is not standing, so on. So he adds as follows: V'noheges, says the Minchas Chinuch, Gam b'nei Noach mitzuvah malzeh. B'nei Noach are also commanded not to cheat at weights and measures.
What's the category?
Geneva v'gezela.
Geneva?
Right. The B'chlal Geneva v'gezela. This is included for them in the category of Geneva and Gezela. Right. Again, I have to reiterate. The Gemara in Bav Mitzvah Matazach wants to know, why do I need a separate lav of Leisav Salava B'mishpat B'mida B'mishkul B'Masura? I already have Leisigdom Leisigdom. Right. So whatever why do I need this mitzvah of the Torah altogether? Right. Whenever you're shortchanging your customers, so you're a ganef. Right. Okay. So whatever the answers of the Gemaras are the answers. But the point is, basically he's saying, well, that's why it would apply to a Ben Noach as well. Because Ben Noach are mitzvah on Gezel and Geneva, so there's a subdivision of Gezel and Geneva. K'vakazat l'el b'chzela u'Geneva d'ladas around perak aleph m'gzela ech yudbeis over b'gzela u'Geneva al shlosh alaven. Whenever a person perpetrates a Gezel and a Geneva, okay, I'm just talking now about a Bar Yisrael, right? So that's actually 3 different Averis of the Torah. What are they? Hainu, lo sachma v'lo sasava. Whatever the particular thing that you did was a theft that the victim knew about, aka a Gezel, a theft that the victim was unaware of, aka a Geneva, you also over on lo sasava and lo sachma, 2 permutations of the 10th commandment, of the Aseret Dibros, of the 10 commandments. At the first time, parts of Yisrael, it says lo sachma. In V'eschanan and Dvarim, it says lo sisave. So obviously, every time you relieved somebody else of their property, that was predicated on a desire to have somebody else's property. And now you've actualized it. You've done not just something a hilchos deis, not just something you feel in your heart. You've acted upon that, so you're over that love as well.
If not, would you be over? If I can show you a case where he did it without sachmo or sasave, but he stole it. For some
Please do. I'm intrigued.
I was just thinking about it because I was thinking is there a possibility that you're not over on all 3 lavin?
According to the Rambam doesn't appear to have been so imaginative.
He did it to save somebody's life.
Well, either that or somebody said I want you to go there, pick their pocket for whatever reason they are. You have no desire for the thing there. I want you to get there because I'll tell on you I'm going to get you in trouble, or for some other reason I'm going to report you for something you did. So you better steal it, and so he just steals it so he can keep the guy quiet. And he has no chemda or...
Interesting. Okay, I don't know. Good question. I mean, you would not be allowed to steal under those circumstances unless your life was in danger, right? And even then, I think it's... I know we say pekuach nefesh derech kol tarakula, but there's a whole shot... No. Besides the 3, there's a whole complicated sugya about imut lahatzel atzma b'mamona shel chavera. Interestingly enough, you can be over all the ritual yisurim of the Torah to save your life. It's not so clear that you can steal another person's property to save your life. Okay, but again, that's not the sugi for tonight. Okay, let's move on now.
He says shalosh alavim, but then he only enumerates 2.
Besides the lo sasal b'mishpat. I'm sorry. Besides the particular gezel or geneva. Whatever act of Gezel Gneva you're doing, along with that is L'Sasava and L'Sachmo.
It's kind of Gam. This is Gam, L'Sachmo, L'Sasava.
But B'nai Noach for L'Sachmo and L'Sasava?
No, now he's switching in the middle of the paragraph. Then he's talking about, the Rambam he's quoting is referring to a Jew who's doing the stealing. Okay, turn to page 3. We're continuing along with this theme of the Chatzi Shir. Very, very interesting shilas that he raises here. We're going to try to do as much of 17 through 19 as we can in the remaining time. Okay, we're starting with paragraph 17 on page 3. Od rega adaber kan din gzel vayna asher kasavte lel b'shem Rambam v'shar Rishonim. The dafka al pruta over and pakad v'shar pruta rega Chatzi Shir k'mash Rabbi dever Rav Mechaber. Okay. I want to speak for one more moment here. In all of these averis, gzeila, ona, cheating at weights and measures, right? I said in the name of the Rambam and the other Rishonim, except with the possible exception for the Sefer Chinuch himself, that you're only over the lavin if you steal a full pruta, but that doesn't mean that it's not forbidden with less than shar pruta. Less than shar pruta is the concept of Chatzi Shir, Asim and Atara. Hey Chadin, in Gaza Pakad Mishar Pruta, if a person stole less than a Shar Pruta, V'achakach Gaza Lo Pakad Mishar Pruta, and afterwards he stole another less than a Shar Pruta.
Can I assume it's from the same person, or it's 2 different Chatzis?
For that's very sharp. For the time being, yeah, let's assume it's from the same victim.
What's the question?
2 different victims or 1 victim. Okay? For simplicity's sake, if we get to it in number 19, he's going to talk about 2 different victims. So for simplicity's sake right now, let's understand He's asking a question. It's the same victim. Okay? I stick my hand into, Reuben sticks his hand into Shimon's back pocket. Right? Or actually, we're dealing with this. Okay? I'm a grocer. I sell milk. My quart is short. Right? But it's not short by much. The price of milk today, the amount that my quart is short, it's about a half a pruta of milk I'm cheating the customer every time they buy a quart. So my name is Reuben, I'm the shopkeeper. Shimon, the customer, comes in. He buys whatever the amount of money is for a quart. Right? He's overpaying by half a pruta every time he buys a quart. He comes in on Monday. I measure him out a faulty quart of milk. He comes in again on Thursday, and I do the same thing. Right? Now do I owe him a full pruta or not? Right? Is there tziruf? Can we put the two half shiurim together? All right? Hechadinim gazel pak mishar pruta v'achak gazel loy pak mishar pruta im itztaref lav ala lav. We over on the lav, right? And also it's l'kama so the heshiv. Right? His whole point before was that less than a shar pruta is not the threshold of mammon altogether. So there's no nitnul tashlumin. There's no mitzvah yishalei. You can't do heshiv as exel l'sher gazel. What about over here? Well, ma shiur l'tziruf. What would be the shiur? What would be the amount? Okay, for tziruf. Well, obviously, it doesn't mean in money. We know the amount. Whatever aggregates, whatever adds up, sum totals to a shavu pruta. If it was a quarter pruta and you did it 4 times, okay, then you got your shavu pruta. If it's a third of a pruta, you did it 3 times. He's asking in terms of time. Right? There's 2 elements for tziruf. Right? There's volume and there's time lapse. Right?
It's also an interesting question.
Yeah.
Whether you talk about the due process with the ADM and everything that you need all these things. If they only figured it out a quarter, we're looking after he did the half and the half together. Now he has something into the tashlumin. But if not, if they caught him only after the first chatzi shir, it's less than a shar prutus. Now we will get malchus according to a gazela thing. We get malchus because he did just the half, and they meet out the punishment now. Now he does the other half a few days later.
Okay, so let's not deal with rejected shitas. The Minchas Chinuch basically squashed the Chinuch on that. There is no concept of malchus by theft. It's only chatzi shir asim and atayra. Okay, the only other point of Edom would be to make it enforceable in a bezin. All right? Now let's say the guy has a hero tshuva, he wants to do tshuva. Is there a mitzvah of Hashav over here or not? Okay. V'hinei, b'yisur and halach l'moshe m'sinai, kazayis b'chdei achilas pras. All right? Shiurin in general are halach l'moshe m'sinai. And we know when it comes to machalos asuros, when it comes to forbidden foods, then we know the volume and we know the time lapse. Right? The shir of achila, what's considered a ma'isa achila, an act of eating, a unified act of eating, is a certain volume within a certain amount of time. You've got to eat a kazayas, and it's got to be b'chdei achilas pras. V'kan l'shayach. Over here, we have no halacha l'moshe m'sinai. What should be the time lapse, or whatever other variable, whatever other factor, when you're talking about stealing from a person. The me'il mitztarefes afilu zman meruba. V'kan madina. Okay, I'm going to read you that Rambam. Okay, me'ila, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, me'ila means expropriation of consecrated items. All right, a person in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Yeah, right. Well, lots of ma'als in the Torah, Balkari, I'm sure you know. The Beisayt that says a ma'al by the Dalet Shaiman, by Shalech. Yad Pikadon, I believe it says a mal ba'misa, right? Isn't it a passage somewhere ba'misa? Okay, yeah. But the classic meila, generic meila, without being modified, meila means when an item is consecrated and it is used for private use.
But it has to be done l'shogeg though, from meila. It has to be done unintentionally. I understand. To be
chayav an asham. Yeah.
To be chayav the.
No, that's incorrect. To have to bring the asham, okay, one of the ashamas is one of the guilt offerings. Manad b'atayr is asham me'ilas. You bring an asham from being mile b'hagdish. That has to be b'shayging, but that doesn't mean that if you do b'mezid, you won't mile. You're mile. Your kapara is stiffer. You can't get off so easy just by bringing a carbon.
I thought they didn't call it me'ilah.
What was that called?
I don't know. But I thought that me'ilah definition means it had to be b'shogeg.
No. That's incorrect. To the best of my knowledge, that's incorrect. Okay, so listen to this. Where's the Rambam exactly? Again, what did he say? Perak Hay. I'm in Shkogus over here. Okay, Perak Hay. Okay, so the Rambam reads like this. Okay, but again, first, because I'm not sure Ed is familiar with Milah is altogether. So, for example, right, if a guy consecrates a sheep, he's going to bring it for a shlomim, yeah, for a peace offering, for a carbon, no, for an offering, yeah. He can no longer shear it, right? If it's a female, right, he can no longer milk it, right? If it's an ox, he can no longer have it pull the plow. If it's not animals, if it's inanimate objects, okay, you consecrate a pile of wood, you can't say, well, look, I'm giving so much to the Beis HaMikdash, I'll pull out one cord and throw it in my fireplace. No good. Anytime you're deriving any benefit from consecrated items, even items that you consecrated yourself, that's called Mi'ila B'Hagdish.
It's like a pledge of, is it like the same as you pledge something to a shul, in a sense, you say...
That may or may not be a modern day application. The closest modern day application that we have in halacha to laws of Mi'ila is that we don't read by the light of a Chanukah menorah, that we put a shamus there. As we say in the declaration, Haneres halalu kodeshem, then only reshus l'shtamish b'hem l'rosim b'vad. These are holy lights, and therefore we have no license to use them at all. We can only look at them. We cannot look with them. Right? That's the shamus, inadvertently, in case you do read something, or whatever, don't bump into something, by the light of the Chanukah lamp. We say, well, it was from the illumination, it was from the light of the shamus, not from the others. That's one of the functions of the shamus. Another function is it's a whole shalat, it can be madlik minair laner. Okay, at any rate, listen to this line in the Rambam. Perakei halacha dal mila. Ha'me'ilu mitztareves l'zman merubim. The tziruf of the shear of the amount that's required to transgress me'ilah can even be over a tremendous length of time. Keitzad, how is that? Nehena hayom min ha'hegdish. Maybe this is what you're referring to. You might be right about shogeg. Nehena hayom min ha'hegdish, at least l'gabi tziruf. If you had hana, if you derived benefit today from hegdish, from something consecrated, the nehena lacha kamashanim, and you were nehena a number of years later, behelam echad, in one act of unconsciousness, herel mitzvah from the pruta amo. If the aggregate, the sum of both, was a pruta, okay, in other words, let's say a stick of firewood sells on the open market for half a pruta. And I concentrated a pile of firewood, and I forgot all about it. Whatever, I got busy, I forgot that this is a pile that I wanted to take to the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe I made a mistake, maybe there were two piles of wood, and I took the other pile of wood to the Beis HaMikdash, and I left the consecrated one at home. Whatever, you can use your imagination to come up with cases of what we call helam, unconsciousness, or aka shogeg, by accident. No premeditation, right? So if I took one stick and I threw it into my mantle fireplace, right? And then a year later I took another stick, or many years later I took another stick, right? And together they turn out, and then I give out. You used the oak, you didn't use the ash wood. The oak wood was something you consecrated to the Beis HaMikdash. You don't remember? Oh yeah, now I remember. Right? So that would be Mi'ila B'Hagdish. Okay? So in other words, unlike Machalos Asuris, unlike forbidden foods, there seems to be no statute of limitations when it comes to Mi'ila. As long as ultimately you end up deriving a pruta's worth of benefit from Hagdish, then you arrive on Mi'ila. So let's see what he tries to do with this. Over Mi'ila, I feel as Madina. Here, I don't know. I know that by forbidden foods, it's got to be relatively quick. It's got to be B'chdei Achilus Pras. By Me'ila, I just read you the Rambam, it could be many years. Sounds like, that's just an example. It sounds like basically many years, a way of saying there's no statute of limitations at all. What is it by Gezel? Says the Minchas Chinuch, let's do number 18. V'nirali, the hinem of Uberam Perkal Migzela. Halach Avava, Beis V'Lael, the Pachz Sharpruta and a mitzvah Heshev. With less than a Sharpruta, there is no mitzvah of the Heshev as Exel Shagazal, to return that which you sold. It's what we call not nitin l'tashlumin. For Rav Mechaber Lael, the Rav Mechaber meaning the Chinuch writes, doesn't Tam, Kivin the B'Yisrael Yisrael Mochel. The reason is that the default setting, Jews have deserved, undeserved reputation for stinginess, they're not that stingy. If it's less than a shar pruta, they say, forget it. I'm Michael. I'm not going to take it to a small claims court over a half a pruta's worth of stuff. All right? Ayin Shem. Now, Shibiana Lafi Tamzeh, okay, what I wrote, he's self-referential. He was referring to something that he wrote earlier, that if the chinuch is right, that if the reason why there's no mitzvah of Heshvus Exel Asher Gazel unless in a shar pruta is because the victim is mochel, he absolves the thief of repayment, he abdicates his own monetary rights. If that's what it's all about, dim gazel etzel katan delabnei mechila. Then, if your victims of your theft were katanim, were underage children, parenthetically, I would throw into the category other mental incompetence like cherish and shota, a congenital deaf mute, or an insane person. If those were your victims, these are not people who have advice and consent. They don't have what we call das. They don't have the halachic category of being able to make informed decisions. So their mechila is meaningless. They can't be Michael. They can't make a kinyan. They can't buy anything. They can't sell anything. They can't abdicate their rights to anything. Right? So, right? If the chinuch is right, and the reason is because of mechila, so if your victim happened to be an underage child, then you would have to return, even less than half a pruta. Let's say it's not gzela, let's say it's gneva. Gneva is the victim doesn't realize what happened. He could go for a very long time. He might go to his death, his grave, without realizing what happened. Right? Well, if you don't know that you've been robbed, that you've been relieved of property, you can't say, I'm Michael the guy for stealing from me. So if you're unaware of the theft, obviously there's no mechila. Right? So in a case like that, okay? So, according to the reasoning of the chinuch, where you were a ganef and not a gazlan, right? Then you would be required by the Torah to return the gneva, even if it's to the tune of lasan and shav bruta. Nobody was machli. Nobody could be machli because nobody knew they had to be machli. If they'd be aware of the theft, fine. It's so little, it's so minuscule. I'm Michael. All right, but the whole description, the whole criminal category of gneva is that they're unaware of the theft, the victims. So it's not to be Michael.
Is he coming to try to prove what? Is he trying to say against the chinuch? Like even though the chinuch says this, he's trying to find a problem against what the chinuch is saying about the davar.
He is basically in mid-sentence here. We have to let him talk. He's trying to address the question of tziruf. Okay?
Yeah.
How much time elapse, if there is time elapse at all, would apply to being mitzaref in these averis of cheating, our kind of cheating in weights and measures. He's doing a little bit of a pilpul here. He's just the first step. Okay. We never found such a thing like this, that there should be a chiluk between Gezel and Geneva, or between Katanim and Gedolim as victims, right? Right? Now it is true that the chinuch does have a leg to stand on. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that does make it sound that less than a shav pruta, the reason why there's no mitzvah of hashav tashavloi is because of mechila, as the chinuch says. The Gzeres HaKosavu, it's not a logical law of the Torah, it's a Gzeres HaKosav, it's just a Torah decree, doesn't have to be rational or logical. The B'chad B'Shav Pruta ain't b'din hashava. Less than a shav pruta is not included in the din / on the mitzvah of returning. Okay, stop, pause for a second. We don't know where he's going with this yet, but once again, he's articulated another machlokes rishonim. The chinuch on the one hand, the Rashi and the Rambam on the other hand. The chinuch learns that the reason why there's no hashava on less than a shav pruta is because the victim was Michael. Rashi and the Rambam learn that it's Gzeres HaKosav. There is no logic behind it. That's just the way it is. It's shiurim, it's halachal ma'aseh mitzina. Less than that just doesn't count. So we didn't count the theft. It can't count for the mitzvah of returning. Okay. The Machna Ephraim is locked on the horns of this dilemma. Which sheet in the Rishonim should we go like? What's the true reason why there's no hashava unless in Shav Pruta? The Echriya. Machna Ephraim is Machriya. Even in cases where Mechila is not applicable, there still is no mitzvah to return things. In other words, even if your victim was an underage child, or even if it was Geneva and not Gazela, so nobody knew that they had to be Michael you, right? You still wouldn't have to return less than a Shav Pruta. Okay. So Ad Kan, we have a Machlokes Rishonim, and we have a Machna Ephraim being Machriya in favor of Rashi and the Rambam against the Chinuch. Im Kainirli Pashut, if that's right, if the Machna Ephraim is right, it would seem to me simple. Dim Gazel Agana Machas B'Shav Pruta, that if you stole less than a Shav Pruta, or in our case you cheated in weights and measures less than a Shav Pruta, the Chaver Yada, and his friend that knew about it, V'Gadol D'Hu B'Mechila, and he's an adult and he's capable of being Michael, Im Kain, if so, Kivin to take of Machal, since he was immediately Michael. After the first theft, or the first act of cheating, Im Kain, and Gazel Achazman, Pachas B'Shav Pruta, V'Vada, and it's Tarif, to V'Vada Machal. Right? If afterwards you stole another half a pruta, right? You shortchanged the guy in his milk on Monday. Okay, what was it? 3 drops of milk? Also a Shav Pruta, forget about it. Right? So now it's not shot when you cheat him again on Thursday that, hey, you're running up a tab by this guy. First, you cheated him on Monday. Right? No, you have a zero balance. By the time you get to the new cheating on Thursday, it's a zero balance. There can't be tziruf. If the way it works is with Mechila,
fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
That may be, but call me a karga skniere, call me a cheapskate that I can't let go of I want to tell you something. Halach l'maisa. I saw him preparing for the shir. Okay, just parenthetically, a very interesting thing. Okay, it says that the milk is a good case. It says that when you're doing liquid measures, all right, you shouldn't let a head build up as you pour. Sometimes things can bubble up, right, and that can fill the guy's cup,
like
right?
Beer in a pub, right?
Right.
You pour it fast and it's
exactly. Okay, so the din is that when you're pouring liquid out, that can develop a head. You have to let it settle down, and then you have to let from the pouring cup. You have to let 3 drops more fall in to the other cup. That means he got his full measure. All right? Says the Shulchan Aruch, passes the Shulchan Aruch, this is only in private exchanges. For some reason, a guy has a keg of beer in his house, and for some reason, the customer doesn't want to go down to the local bar, so when you're pouring from your keg of beer, make sure that there's no head there and the guy's full measure. But b'chenveni, if you're dealing with a merchant cannot do business that way. He doesn't have time to what? The old, Hunt's ketchup commercials, anticipation, it's making me wait, He can't deal with a bunch of customers on a line. Wait for the head to go down, wait for the 3 drops to pour out. You can't do it. So in other words, there is a concept, even in these very exacting dinim of the Torah about weights and measures, there is the concept that in order for commerce to run, there's an understanding between sellers and buyers that sometimes you're not going to get the full measure. Right? I know a very scrupulous takeout store where I live, in the neighborhood where I live, that when they measure your coleslaw for you, they weigh it on the scale, as dry as is humanly possible, stoop it down in the container, and then they skim off, whatever liquid is, and they pour that back into the serving plate. And after it's weighed, then if you like your coleslaw soggy and you ask for it, then but they don't want you paying for liquid when what you're buying is vegetables. Very ehrlich. I don't know if that's what the din requires. That's for the mishras, and then I'm not bucking these halachas. I'm just learning. I'm just a humble Minchas Chinuch student there, right? But what I'm trying to say is this: they don't, discount the weight of the container. That they don't discount. That I am paying for, right? and I'm happy to pay for it. I understand it.
The law is you got to take the tear weight.
They got to tear it. They got to tear it.
They got to take that weight off the container,
it's the.
or it's the law.
Oh, is it the law?
Yeah, it's the law.
Yeah, they're supposed to do it.
Oh, I never noticed. I don't know.
How do you do that?
That weight.
How do you do
You
it?
put the container on the
First
scale.
thing is
It
zero it
measures
out.
0.04
Right.
of
And zero
100,
it out.
and then
It's a button.
they hit the minus button, and now the scale is minus 0.04.
Okay, so I assume they do. I'm not going to be mighty shame on them and say they don't do it, but I'm surprised. Maybe they do it. It's New York State law. Maybe it's Shulchan Aruch law too. Maybe it's in Malchuzah. But let's put it this way: I certainly wouldn't have a taina on them. If when they weighed for me, they were counting the container too.
They probably have the scale.
Again, because especially you're in a takeout store with a big crowd, you're in a pizza shop. You understand? You can't. Those extra seconds when you have 30 customers online in the store. That's also worth money.
But if you understand that those large containers,
Right.
the very tall containers, those core containers,
Right.
they weigh enough that at the price that you pay for a gefilte fish, something that, and they put the fish in the container
Right.
there, it'll come out to a whole $1.
Not a Shabbat Pruta.
No, whatever you shove, we don't know exactly what the amount is, but $1 for something that's $8 a pound could be $1.
I had no idea.
It could be.
So you tell me New York State law, they do deduct the weight of the container.
They're supposed to.
If the magic guys come, they'll get a big fine for it.
You don't train them all to do that, so you have to tell them.
I have no idea. I
I
never paid that close attention.
They keep the scale already torn, as with the tear scale.
What does torn mean?
Tear, T-A-R-E.
Yeah.
They keep it teared below the zero all the time, so they don't run into this problem. They show me that they do that all the time.
Okay.
But what a patient? Oh my goodness! A person, a person goes into a store. He gets his little bit of milk. He goes, okay. Next time, I'm sure he'll be more scrupulous. Comes back the next. So I'm Michael, and it comes back the next time. Wait, this is happening again. What's going on here?
Yeah, but you cannot rescind your first mechila. Machal is machal. You were
So
Michael.
now the second time.
But this time he also stole. But this time he also stole less than a Shabbat Pruta.
Right.
So how can you have tziruf? You can't say, now you ran up a tab on me. Now you owe me a whole Shabbat Pruta. It's not true. You were Michael me the first time.
What about the third time he comes?
Okay, good question.
Then you should go back to the guy.
Okay.
And it'll leave
I know the maxim that you said, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But he's saying even fool me twice. People just Michael, it's a negligible amount. Right? So I think it would be a third time, a fourth time, 20 times. I don't think it would make a difference. Look, he's making. He's saying that if you're an adult, you're a Babachila, and you're aware of what's going on, then it would be true.
You have to declare, I'm not Michael, for the thing that say so. Then it doesn't apply. You went up there and you.
I would say even more than that. What do you have to? What's it called? Liflik v'lisim b'didei. Yeah. Let's say it's a cotton. A cotton came into the store.
You can't be Michael.
Right. Okay. Let's read on in here. Let's see how he feels the case. How he concludes this. Imker nearly pasha. Dim gazel agan pachim shav pruta v'chaver yada v'gadol v'bamachil imken. Given the take of Machalai, since immediately he was Machal, if afterwards, after a certain interval of time, he cheated or stole from him again, so there's no tziruf because he was Machal. What difference does it make if your victim, your chaver, forgave you? Yeah? Or if you were Machal, let's say you all of a sudden you got tugged by a conscience, and he called the conscience, here, take 3 more out here. Here, take the shot glass of milk. I cheated you on it, right? So Avada, if now our business was bad this week, I still got to shortchange everybody, or I'm not going to make it, right? So certainly, if you had returned the less than shower pruta of milk the first time, so the next time you cheated him, you'd say, okay, but now the meter started running again. Now it's still only half a pruta. So there's no difference whether you returned it or the guy said, you don't have to return it, I Michael you. It's all the same thing. The tab is back to 0. The balance is still at 0. So there's never going to be a tziruf in a case like that. If he had returned him the lesson sharpruta, even though halachically that's not called Tyrus Yishav, and he certainly didn't need to, and it was lifting the Mishra Zadin, but let's say you did it. So certainly the second time he stole or cheated from him, or cheated him, so there's not being over the law, there's no tziruf. It'd be the same thing if he forgave you. Avalim Gonav, v'chaver lo yadal diyam chaloi, if you were ganef, and the guy is unaware, or the Gonav v'gazal behind the lav mechila, or if you even gezel, but from a cotton or a cherish or a shaita, or I would say parenthetically, by definition, every false measure is akin to gneva, not to gzela. Right? The customers would know that you're dealing in false weights and measures. They'd find another merchant. Right? It's almost always unconscious. Then the half pruta that you stole is not yours. Nobody was meichel it to come into your possession. It still belongs to the other guy. There may not be a din shavin on it, but it still belongs to the other guy. There's no chiyuv to return it. Chatzi shir would be the same thing as chatzi shir in forbidden foods, for example. You're not chayiv. But if you eat afterwards another half a kazayas of lobster, so there's a tziruf, there's a coming together retroactively. If afterwards you stole another half a pruta, mitztarif, they come together, they aggregate. Then you will have been over the lav, and you will have to return the whole pruta. It definitely would have a tziruf, have a capacity to come together, even after a lot of time, just as we learned me'ilah. The chutz meisur machal mistafel zman meruba. He's using me'ilah as a precedent, right? The only time we say to be an integrated act of achila, of eating, of course, a guy would not say that when he's eating dinner, now I feel satiated from breakfast. Now I finally got that full food. You've digested your food already from breakfast, right? We understand that when it comes to eating, there's going to be a time limit after which you can't say that the two acts are integrated as one. But when it comes to money, you're running up a tab. What does it make the time? Right? We see that by Mila. If in middle there was knowledge on the part of the victim, so that automatically drags with it mechila. If it's less than a shav pruta, I feel gazel compound pakim shav pruta can nearly bar bezel shav. Okay, so if you were a ganef and your victim was unawares and you did it multiple times until now you owe more than a shav pruta or more, then you would have to return it. There is what we call tziruf, there's integration, and you now have the full shir, the full amount of both the isser and the mitzvah of hashava. Right? But if the victim became aware in the middle, and we're talking about an adult victim, so with advice and consent, somebody who could be meichel, who could forfeit their property rights, so then there can be no tziruf, because then, again, the meter, the tab, goes back to zero.
Yeah.
I just want to say this before we leave. Even though he looks at Me'ilah and the explicit Rambam, which I'm assuming is based on explicit Gemara, that Me'ilah can take place even after many years, right? I think it might be different. Yes, the shear is the same. In the case of Me'ilah, it's not a kazayas, it's a shava pruta. Even if what I consecrated was, it's an interesting law in Me'ilah. Let's say I consecrated foodstuffs, part of foodstuffs, not a carbon, not something that I'm going to take to the base of Mikdash. Oh, carbon, flour. I consecrated flour. I'm going to make a Minchat out of it. All right? And I eat from that flour, so the shear of Me'ilah is not a kazayas, the shear of Me'ilah is a shava pruta. Okay? Interesting din by Me'ilah. Even when I eat, when I'm nehana from Hagdish, by eating, the shear is still a shava pruta, not a kazayas. Having said that, I still don't think that necessarily theft and Me'ilah are 100% identical. But the time is late, and I'll just say it very briefly. There's a very famous philosophical Rambam, the last Rambam in Hilchos Me'ilah, right, where he has such a bitu, he has such an expression. When describing Me'ilah, he says, Kimin shenahag ba minhag chayil ma. The point of Me'ilah is not that you stole and the victim happens to be God. The point of Me'ilah is that there's a double standard in this world. There's kodesh and chol. There's the consecrated and the mundane, right? And you're not supposed to interface, you're not supposed to deal with what is holy as you would with that which is mundane. And that's what meal is all about. Okay? It's not pshat, oh, I'm a thief, I'm a ganef, shel shalai midas. You know, I use something, I derive benefit, I shall prove the benefit from something without asking permission from the owner, from the rightful owner. I stole from God. I don't think that's the point. You can't steal, you can't really steal from God. Right? Why the shir is a sharpruta? Okay, that I'm not a big enough lam, that I'm a philosopher, so now regalachas with everyone halfway out the door. But I think together, the lamda together of what you're doing by me'ilah and what you're doing by geneva might be different enough to say that I don't know if we can bring a proof from the fact that by me'ilah there's no statute of limitations. That means that by gezel there's no statute of limitations. On the other hand, I mean, Misvara, I think he's right. Why should there be a limit? Right? If I borrow money, if I have a credit line at a bank, okay, and I borrow 20 cents 1 year, and I never brought my balance down to zero, and then I borrow another 20 cents 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now, do I owe the bank 40 cents? I mean, I think he's right. I mean, logically, when it comes to money, unlike eating, okay, I don't know if there's any amount of time that can disintegrate, that can pull apart the two chiyuvim.
That may not be a good enough example because they will write it off when it's something small and they won't bother with it. It's too much effort. They are actually moichel. They have a moichel on their books too. It's something that.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, I agree with you. He just said that there's tziruf. Yeah, there's tziruf by gezel, and I know, and I'm assuming by midas and mishkalis. Yeah, either by gneva, where the victim is unaware to be Michael, or by Chereshait of the cotton, where they don't have the capacity to be Michael.
That he would owe now 40 cents, and even after the year later, he would owe 40 cents, and then maybe 60 cents.
Okay, but I'm positing, a victim who's not Michael. Where there would be a victim who's not Michael, you're right. It's more worthwhile for a modern day financial institution in the way they do business to save on the paper fees, to save on the accounting fees, just to round things off, so to speak, and quote unquote be Michael. Yeah? But let's say it would serve their business interest better, right? To tack on fees and never to give up on a penny. Right? So would the fact that there's a big time interval change things? I don't think so. I can't see why. It's not like eating. Eating, I understand. It's not the same meal. It's not the same act of eating if too much time elapsed. But when I'm incurring monetary debt, what do I care how many minutes, hours, years, decades intervene between them? Okay. I think that, I'm not 100% sure, I can't promise you, but I think that the next mitzvah that we're going to do will either have to do with chametz, matzah, or the Korban Pesach. We're getting close enough to Pesach that I think everyone will have some enjoyment from learning a Pesach mitzvah.
I was just thinking about